Hello, I'm Mal, and welcome to the channel. You'll find all sorts of games here, but I tend to lean towards strategy simulation and role-playing game, and today's update falls firmly into that strategy genre. I'm going to break down the major changes to the rebooted Master of Orion. For your point of reference, it's May 22nd of 2016, and we move into what the devs referred to as Phase 4 of the early access development. Phase 4 is focused on stability, bug fixes, UI and AI enhancements, and some new game settings. So today we'll look at the following: notable bug fixes and tweaks, gameplay changes and potential impact. We'll look at the user interface and quality of life improvements, specifically diplomacy and espionage. We'll talk a little bit about the artificial intelligence changes, the combat tactical changes, the ship designer, and then a section I will close up with what I call be part of the solution. Now, bear in mind anything that you hear from me with regards to Master of Orion, I'm going to just put it out there. I am a Master of Orion fanboy. So while I was very critical of things in Phase 3, I have looked forward to Phase 4 in hopes that we're getting a better game. All right, so let's start with notable bug fixes, and then we'll jump into some gameplay. So, according to the notes, various soft locks have been fixed. Now, this is the biggest thing I was looking for, because I had actually set Master of Orion aside until this update came out, because I actually ended not one but two Master of Orion Let's Plays early due to, the game locking up on me. So, according to the devs, they've resolved the issue with, as an example, if you put a spy on hold, or you switch between planets using the arrow keys, or, this one was pretty common, queuing too quickly on the colony screen, that would lock up my play. Now, not everybody had the same issues in Phase 3, but it was pretty prevalent, and a lot of people had complaints, and rightfully so. But I think that it's good that they've made the steps here to fix these issues and lock these down. It's also important to note that I completely removed Master of Orion from my system, and I downloaded a fresh copy with the new update. If I do run into any issues, of course I'm going to let everyone know, but so far in the few hours that I've been messing around with it, I haven't run into any of the issues that I've run into before, and that's a really good sign. They also fixed the blueprints. What was happening was that they were overweighing the design, so let's say you had 65 space and say a frigate design. If you auto-upgraded because you had new tech, what would happen is the system would overburden that particular design. So you'd end up with, like, say 86 or, something like that out of 65, and it would be like a bunch of point defense. So you had a choice of either going in, and we'll look at this more in detail later in the video, but you could either go in the ship designer and quote-unquote fix it, but then you'd be at a disadvantage to your AI opponents because they'd have better ships because they were, overrunning their tonnage for the ship design. So that's supposedly fixed, and that's good. And then there's been a lot of fixes to things like tooltips, that'll show combat speed and other tweaks that have been made. And we'll look at those again as we go along. But those are the notable bug fixes, the biggest being the soft locks, which I don't know what that means, soft lock. If I can't play anymore, isn't that like a hard lock? Which was the case for me. I simply couldn't play anymore. So those are supposed to be, supposed to have been resolved. And again, in the few hours that I've played this new update today, I haven't run into any of those issues. And generally speaking, the game seems to run better and faster than it did before. So that all indicates, again, to the positive. All right, so moving on. All right, gameplay changes. So the biggest change beyond fixes, in my humble opinion, are the new starting options and tweaks made to troop transports. First off, for the age and growth options, I'm actually going to jump into the game and show you the differences between them, specifically a contrast between pre-warp and advanced start. But we'll do that in just a sec. But let me speak to the other changes. We got some much needed changes to the silicoid in the form of a nerf to their population growth. If you're familiar with them, this race required no food, and simply put, their growth was just too darn good. Time will tell if this is going to be enough to draw them into balance with the other races, but it's certainly a first good step. Along with the silicoid adjustment, we have changes to the Uber planets. All races with Uber planet upgrades will start with said planet, but the base planet, not the upgraded one. For example, the silicoids will start on a volcanic world, and they'll have access to the Inferno transformation tech. It remains on the third tier of the biology research line. Now, there are a bunch of changes in the full changelog, and one of them would be easy to miss, but it certainly caught my eye. troop transports no longer remove Marines from the colony where they were commissioned. If this means what I think it does, it means that you're going to be able to spam troop transports. I mean, in terms of the game impact, this is potentially huge, and I can't say if this is a good change or a poor change at this time. I'm going to have to play around with it a little bit, but in theory, around turn 150 to 175, you should have several colonies capable of turning out a new transport every turn or two. The Marine population on the world, which would be extracted every time that you built a transport, was all that was keeping that in check. So in other words, if you often have to halt your aggression if you wanted to take your opponent's worlds intact, because you would run out of ground forces. Now it appears that you'll be able to build a massive ground force, and very early on. This will certainly have a major impact on gameplay if it works out the way I believe it will. Again, it might be a great change, but we'll just have to see how the game flows with it. Alright, so let's jump into and take a look at the starting age options and production and growth and all the other new game settings. See you in just a second. Okay, so the first thing you might notice is there's no fleet whatsoever. It's just our colony. We've only got just a handful of people here. And in terms of what we can build, we've got marine barracks and missile bays. So like I mentioned before, even the most basic tech has to be researched. And that's in the form of space travel, which will unlock Starbase, it'll unlock Colony Ship, Space Factory, Frigate, and Scout. So you would select that as your starter. And for production, well, I guess you could start on a marine barracks just to have something to build. It might actually probably be better to do something like this, where you're splitting between growth and research until that initial is done. Let's see, here we go, path to victory. Planets, you don't know any planets, you have no fleets, and this is your empire as a whole. Just this one little planet with basically no infrastructure. Let's take a look at that. Got nothing. Okay, now we're going to contrast this against the advanced start, so hold on a second and I'll show that to you. Alright, so I have set not only for advanced, which is what we have here, and you can see we've got a fleet, 2 colony ships, a space factory, 2 scouts, a frigate, a destroyer, and a cruiser. So pretty significant difference between obviously pre-warp and going with advanced start. So if you want to really jump your campaign off quickly, you can go with this option. I also put it on fast research, production, and whatnot, so we can see what the impact is of that. Let's go to research. You do start off with the first 3 tiers of tech completed. I don't count this space travel. That's not really a tier, that's just sort of base. So you've got 1, 2, and 3 tiers of tech already completed. And then you have some others done as well, and I assume this is because of the Terran Khanate start, since they have some technology start. So I guess depending on which race you'll have these 3 tiers plus some miscellaneous things from the 4th tier. Alright, let's go to the planet here. We can see we've got, what is that, 8 to start versus 4. We've got a lot of different things that we can build right off the bat. And let's take a look here. How quick with fast research on this setting will it take? So it'll only take 18 turns to do some of this advanced tech with basically hardly anyone on research. So if you decide to put it on fast research, it is not going to take you very long to get that done. You know, you could do something very reasonable like this in 11 turns. You could pick up super alloys from tier 4. That's fast. So that gives you the game impact of this. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue playing this a little bit. Obviously you won't see that, so that I can show you things like the new diplomacy screen and some of the other changes that have been made. See you in a sec. Alright, let's take a look at the new diplomacy changes. So one of the big things is that apparently now it's going to be easier to get agreements, so let's see if that holds true. Let's see, accept embassy? No, okay. Gotta pay them 9. Now, I've tested this a couple times, and this exact same figure has come up every time, so I guess this is what it's gonna cost if you want to get one right away, and you're at neutral disposition, so let's do that. And it's supposed to be easier to get these kinds of agreements. Granted, okay, so it is. What about sharing charts? Yep, did that as well. Okay, now, let's see, negotiations, show info. So right here, this is one of the big UI changes. We've got their basic information, and we have the status of who they know and what's going on with them. So from this screen, it'll be easy now to tell, like if I want to make a trade agreement with her or what have you, non-aggression pact, if she was at war with someone else that potentially I don't want to upset, then I'll know right from this screen. This is a really nice, good change, and I really appreciate them doing it. Okay, so I'm gonna now see if I can't find us some of the other changes, and maybe we can showcase some combat, because they made the combat field larger, and I'm interested in seeing what the impact that has. And then we'll look at the ship designer as well. So I'll be back with you in just a sec. Alright, so the game was kind enough to give me some early combat here, so I can show this to you as well. Yes, the combat field is quite bigger. Interesting. Now, this was in an effort to give you more time to do formations and whatnot, and I'm hoping also that this will change the just going off to the right or left respectively when you're attacking things, that maybe this will give more combat options, because generally what you do is you just run off to the right, and if there's fixed structures, you attack them one at a time, and then that's it. That's the strat. So, yeah, maybe it'll be better this way. Let's go ahead and start the combat and see. Ships are supposed to be more resilient now. Shields are supposed to be worth more. Ceasefire option, okay. Match speeds. We obviously have these guys outclassed. It seems smoother though. Now, I'll have to obviously do more combat than this to judge for sure, but it did seem a lot smoother, and I like the fact that the battlefield area is larger. Alright, so moving on. So another big quality of life change has been the espionage changes. So now we can select a spy, and it tells us exactly where the spy is. We can say, alright, let's assign the colony. We're going to send the person out here, and then once we're there, we're actually going to be able to queue up several missions, one right after the other. So let me get to that, and I'll show you real quick. So here we go. We've got our spy is awaiting orders. So we select missions. Now there's also a new mission. Down here you can steal charts. So in the past, in phase 3, if you couldn't see the planets, then you couldn't conduct espionage. So now you have a way, if you can't get them to share the charts, or you can't get a ship, past sort of their front lines, here's another way. If they've got an outlying colony, then you can do infiltrate, or you can do acquire data, then you can infiltrate diplomacy, and then you can steal charts. And like I mentioned before, now this is all queued up. This would take us 24 turns, and you just hit done. So that's a really big change in terms of quality of life, because it was kind of a pain to manage it. Every couple turns you'd have to tell them to send them on another mission or what have you. So that's a good change. Now, what's not entirely clear to me is still how good is espionage implemented, or how well is it implemented into the game as it stands today. I still don't think it's balanced as well as it should be. They did slow down how quickly you can train new spies, which I think is a good move, but quite frankly, I would rather see a system like Master of Orion II, where you paid for the spy and then had a maintenance cost associated with it. Because right now there's still a top level cap on the number of spies total, and it doesn't scale with the galaxy size, which doesn't really make any sense to me. If you're playing on a huge galaxy, you've got X number of spies, and if you're playing on a small galaxy, you've got X number of spies. So shouldn't it scale according to that? Just a random thought. Anyway, let's move on and talk about some AI changes. So according to the changelog, there's been a lot of changes to the artificial intelligence, and some of these sound pretty interesting to me. First off, they've improved the efficiency of production. improved offensive and defensive strategies. I'm very interested to see what that's all about. Improved quality of planet ratings and potential colonization awareness, so that they don't, I'm assuming that means that they don't just spam colonies everywhere, because the AI tended to just plant their flag everywhere, even on planets that quite frankly weren't really worth colonizing. They have an improved engage command to allow multiple actions in the same turn. So engage and bombard as an example. They'll use radar more effectively to determine settlement and orbital defenses if possible. And let's see, what else did they do? Oh, they changed the engage distance of bombarding pirate settlements from distant to neighbors. Interesting. Okay, so we'll see how that plays out, but, you know, any improvement to the AI, especially if it makes it more challenging, I'm all for. There was also some information that came out today from the CEO of NGD, which is the studio that's building this for wargaming. And one of the big things I took away from what he had to say was that they want to make the AI essentially look just like the player does. In other words, they can't see things the player can't see if they don't have, you know, the sensor range or what have you, that they want to make it fair, and they're working on new ways to make it more challenging without giving them undue advantage, which is really, really cool. So again, I'm interested to see how that all plays out. All right, let's take a look at the ship designer, and then we'll talk a little bit about some thoughts I've got about Master Orion in general, and then we'll wrap this up. All right, so here we are. We find ourselves in the ship designer. Now, they've kind of gone back to the way it was before, so there's no longer this long list of equipment along the side. You simply click on a component, and then it brings up the relevant options. I actually didn't mind the other system, but I guess a lot of people didn't like it. My biggest concern continues to be, you know, do the upgraded blueprints work correctly now? According to them, it does, so it doesn't overcapacity. I had given that example earlier of about a frigate that had like 86 of 65 when it does an auto upgrade on a blueprint. Apparently that doesn't happen anymore, so that's good. And I guess this is easier to use for people, just being able to click on what they want, click on weapons, and then it brings up everything. I don't know though, you know, in the late game, there's an awful lot of weapons, so having those filters where you could pick, you know, beam weapons or missile weapons or what have you, that was kind of nice. So I don't know, maybe they could put a selection right here and just put a filter in, because that would be beneficial. Now, the descriptions, actually, let's take a look at that. That is fixed. So if we go, let's see, let's grab here, neutron blaster. Okay, so we've got modifiers. We can see now that when we hover over, it gives us all of the relevant information. So armor piercing and range dissipation is supposed to be in. So weapons that have range fall off, like beam weapons and what have you, that's supposed to be in the game now. So that's a change. But what I still don't know, and it was not confirmed in the patch notes, so even though we have this information of the modifiers, we don't know if this is actually working or not. And I don't think that it is. You know, maybe someone will do some testing or what have you to confirm that. But, you know, the information here is here. That's great. Range dissipation and armor piercing are effectively in. They've changed the way shields work to make ships more durable, but I don't think modifiers are in. And that's really the part about designing ships in Master of Orion, at least in previous iterations, that was so much fun, because you could make some really unique ships, and depending on which techs you picked, you could take a, you know, quote unquote lower end tech and then modify it and make it very useful even in the mid or even the late game. So I look forward to that actually being fully implemented. And we still don't have ship veterancy, so as ships continue to go along, their crews don't get any better. I hope we're going to see that as well. All right, so let's wrap this up. So I just want to wrap this up by saying that I think that Master of Orion is on the right track and potentially could be a great game. And I would encourage everyone in the community to, by all means, give your direct feedback, because that's the only way we can make a better game. But what I have noticed both on subreddit, on the official forums, on the Steam forums, is there is, and I guess this is always going to be the case, but there seems to be a contingent of people that not only are they rude and crass, but what are their suggestions for making it better? And even if they have suggestions, why does it need to be presented in such a hostile way? I mean, what is the benefit of that? So if you are a fan of the series and you want this to be a good game, I would suggest, and again, no one has to listen to me, I understand that, but I would humbly suggest that we all submit our bug reports, give our feedback in a professional manner, and support the dev team as they are trying to make the best game that they can, which I do sincerely believe that they are. I don't think anybody sets out to go, oh, I want to make a crap game. I don't think that that's really the case, at least not from this group. So, time will tell whether or not I'm right or wrong. But in any case, I hope that you have enjoyed this look at Phase 4 of Master of Orion. I will be starting again my Let's Play of the Terran Khanate, so be looking for that. Links for everything will be below the description of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I am Mal, and I'll see you later.